Hello, guys. Welcome to another stream. Today, I'm joined with none other than Cryptographics, and we're going to be talking everything Titan X and everything Taurus as well. How are you doing today, sir?
Dude, I am doing awesome. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you as it is. So having a conversation together about Titan X, Taurus, Phoenix probably at some point too. I mean, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be really, really fun. Yeah. Just as we wait for some people to kind of come in, do you kind of want to refresh everyone on your journey into Titan X? Maybe start with what brought you into crypto in the first place, and then what's kind of led to coming into the Titan X ecosystem.
Yeah. So I love telling this story because it's like everyone has the same reaction of like, really? Which is like my mom basically got me into crypto. And she was the one that was pushing me like, you should do this, you should do this, you should really look at it. And at the time I was like looking at Bitcoin, I was like, it looks like old tech dinosaur, like everyone's already in. And I'm like, Ethereum's kind of doing its thing. Meanwhile, like, I mean, it's worth 100K now, so I wasn't exactly correct, but like still that was my mentality at the time. And finally, I started reading. She gave me a blockchain for dummies book and a Bitcoin for dummies book. I remember in the rock truck that I was in at the time, driving around, the books were in my cabin. Every time I'd park to get loaded by the excavator, I would just be reading all day, just absorbing these books. And next thing you know, I was like searching for, okay, what's better than Bitcoin and ETH? What's that new thing? And I remembered actually hearing on a podcast by Miguel Dollar Cost Crypto about this token called Hex. And I was like, okay, I remember I wrote it down and I forgot about it. And then like, I don't know, 8 months later, I was like, what was that thing called again? That guy was talking about. And then I think a video popped up and I found Whales Only. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like one of the OG Hex guys. And I was out doing camp work at the time, working like 12-hour days and basically just listening to this guy talk about Hex over and over and over. Now my mind was blown. And so I eventually started talking to family about it, started talking to friends about it. And all the objections people gave me, like why it didn't make sense, but made me research more, made me go deeper to like understand Hex and crypto period. Right. And next thing you know, at the time I had a podcast with a friend and we were kind of doing like a mind, body, spirit kind of podcast talking about financial, physical,
Nice.
mental health. And I did a cryptocurrency episode and I did so much work for it. And he was like, bro, you need to either start a YouTube channel or a TikTok and do something. And I was like, well, I despise TikTok, so I guess I'll do a YouTube channel. And basically things kind of kicked off there. And this whole time, every step of the way where I was getting, let's say, positive feedback in that sense, right? It pushed me to research further and start modeling. And when I first got into Hex or into the Pulse Chain ecosystem, talking about Pulse Chain, Pulse X, Hex, all that, I was really getting to know intimately, at least on a very, very ground level, systemic design, right? And just how systems work, how game theory actually works, how and I didn't really know it yet, right? And so time goes on and I slowly start getting a little more advanced with what I'm trying to do. And I like to try and calculate things, right? So I started building these models of Hex and all these protocols that came out. They started getting really, really elaborate. And then I started realizing that as the many, many, many months went on, that I was actually like calculating numbers that came to fruition. And I was like, okay, wow, there's something here. And people were giving me positive feedback. And that translated into Hedron Icosa. And eventually, I actually tried to build my first protocol on paper, and it was terrible. It was so bad. But it was fun, and I got a lot of good feedback. And Crypto Kool-Aid, shout out to you, my man. He basically pointed me to a guy named Mike Sellers, which is like the GOAT for systemic design. I started watching his videos, really thinking about, value leaks, positive feedback loops, the different layers of experience and how that loops into like the gamification, so to speak. And I eventually was on stream. Well, and of course, meanwhile, Titan X pops up, right? Now, at first, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I kind of had the Pulse Chain boxed in mindset at the time where I was like, I don't know, man, it's not on this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend come to me like, Steve, get in here. We're doing this together. I'm bringing you in with me. So I was like, all right, whatever, man, let's do it. So I go in, I start modeling it, and my mind's like, wait a second. holy shit. Like this
Yeah.
thing's nuts. Like, oh my God, I faded this thing for even a day. Like for 2 days, I didn't get it. I got it on day 3. And then I
So this
started to
was at
see,
the very beginning of Titan X, is when
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So day one, you were like, oh, okay, I'm sure about it, and then you thought more about it, and day 3 is when you were like, holy shit, and you had
Well,
the light bulb moment.
actually, so I guess it would have probably been day 4 or 5. I had the light bulb on. I had a really good friend come to me
Okay.
and just like, dude, I don't care. Just get in here. I think there's something here. You need to trust me on this. Get in here. So I was like, all right, let's do it. Whatever. And to help him out, I started modeling and just being like, what's going on here? And as I started modeling, my eyes were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. And seeing the ETH payouts and all that, I was just blown away. And so maybe 4 months later, or maybe 4 or 5 months later, I was streaming and someone asked me, what would you like to see built on Titan X? At the time, there wasn't a whole lot built, right? Dragon X wasn't even out yet. And so someone asked me, what would you like to build? What would you like to see built? And for whatever reason, I said out loud, I would really like to see something built that's utilizing, because at the time, mining was happening a lot, right? So in my mind, that was going to keep going. And I basically said out loud, I was like, well, what if you could use the ETH parameter, that's the ETH numbers that's coming in, to essentially calculate a protocol, or make a protocol that issues tokens based on the amount of ETH coming in and out, right? And then that seed planted in my mind, kind of went along a little bit, and I was like, wait a second, what if I
Still is
built
there.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
what if I tried to build that? So then I made up this whole thing. And I had this whole call and put option essentially built on Hex, where if you were ultra bullish on Titan X and you thought ETH was going to start rolling in, you could amplify essentially your gains by earning when the ETH is rolling in more. Or if you're bearish, you could go the other way to the other protocol, right? And I brought this to a bunch of people, and it was so damn expensive because I had the world's most elaborate protocol idea. And B, by the time I brought it to Jake was like, yeah, it's not quite gonna work as well. And so he then gave me a couple suggestions, and I actually gave up on it completely. And I was like, you know
Really?
what? I was in a group chat, and I just decided to toss the whole white paper in there. I had everything designed, I had all the math done, I'd modeled it extensively, and I was like, you know what, guys, I give up. This is it. Here, you can have it. So if one of you
Yeah.
guys wants to put your money to do it, it's all yours.
So
And I
when was
pressed
this?
send. This would have been a few months ago,
Okay.
not like pretty recently.
Okay.
And I basically put it in there, hit send, sat down, was like, and then boom, I had this realization hit me of how the system needed to be to actually be complete and to be what Taurus is now. And based on like all the conversations I'd had with Jake and everyone. And then next thing you know, boom, I start freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I start like deleting the comments and like
Yeah.
retracting everything, like trying to wipe everything of any evidence of shred of evidence that was there. And then Taurus comes out, at least the base idea. I run it by Jake one more time. And this is for the staking idea that I had, where you could basically stake to earn those same tokens from the other side. So that way, when prices are down, you're not screwed. And so I brought it to Jake, and we made some more tweaks, and he had some suggestions. And next thing you know, we're here having this conversation, and Taurus, the white paper's out in the wild, and we're about to go into the building phase. And I can't believe I'm a YouTube guy that started, only a few years ago, and now I've got something. So it's pretty special.
Yeah.
It's pretty special.
It is crazy, isn't it? I can kind of relate to what you're saying. It's like you have this idea and it's kind of like good in your head, but you're like, okay, there's something missing. And you are thinking over it, thinking over it, thinking over it. And then there's that one point that you remember where it just clicks and it's like, okay, this is what I need to do. And it's not like you've been thinking it over, but it just kind of comes to you. It's really weird. And it comes to you, and then you're like, right, I want to do this. And now, because I'm in the same position, it's like it feels like time has just completely jumped, and now I'm in the position similar to you where it's being built, and it's like coming to fruition. And it feels like literally last week when it was still just like a idea in my head. So it's
Mhm.
crazy how it all kind of comes just out of nowhere and like jumps up on you. Yeah.
Oh, 100. Yeah, when you're least expecting it, when you like give up on it, or completely just you're doing something that has nothing to do with that very thing, and it just pops in your mind. Like, I don't know how, that's so cool that can work like that. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so just going back quickly. So your mum originally got you into crypto.
Yeah.
is she been a holder for a long time? Is she into Bitcoin, or is she into the whole post chain side of things?
She's dipped her toes into the pulse chain side of things. Because getting I was giving them things that were in the ecosystem, like Hedron and Icosa, that didn't end up so well. They're once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah,
But so mainly in the usual stuff. You know,
yeah.
a lot of utility stuff and a lot of, like, I don't know, pre-search is one, Chili's is another. Like, she really loved those. I wasn't a big fan at all, but that's her style, and so she was really pumped on that. So usually if there's like something that's being built out and there's a token to represent or give people to capture some of that value of whatever that is, it seems to be a pattern that she really enjoys.
Yeah, that is a huge fuss because most of the time it's the kids getting their parents into things, but I've never heard this before. It's like a complete 180. But
Yeah,
that's super interesting. And then you got swept into everything, got into post chain. Do you mind just running through the time? So you said you heard about Hex, you wrote it down. 8 months later is when you first started really researching it. What was the time frame, and how early would have you have been to Hex that first time when you heard about it?
it was April 2021 when I heard of Hex.
Okay.
And it might not have been 8 months. It might have been closer to like 6 or 7, because it was around the end of August or September. I'm pretty sure. Or no, I think it was October, because I literally bought basically the top on the
Oh,
day,
no.
more or less. Figuratively, it's fun to say I bought the top on the day. Hi.
Yeah.
But I bought in October and immediately staked it for 3 years and then watched it go to dust over the next 3 years. But it was, 6-7 months after that I bought in for the first time and kind of started that journey. That was like when that was the first time where I was in. I was actually now a part of the crypto space.
Okay, yeah. So not too long ago. I think that sounds like a similar time to me as well.
Mhm.
And it sounds like I had a similar experience. And I think a lot of people do as well. You buy at the top and then it absolutely plummets. And you either make the decision, you're like, okay, this is a scam, I'm never touching it again. Or you're like, okay, this has potential. I just don't understand it enough. I think
Mhm.
that's the difference that people have. And yeah, investing your time into it and really researching it. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a huge benefit. I feel like this is the future, and being here, especially with what's going on in Titan X, it's like it's a perfect time. And that kind of journey, I think a lot of other people kind of share. So coming to Titan X now, what was the main decision to build on Titan X right now?
So, I mean, you just look at the data, you look at where everything is pointing on the numbers side of things with Titan X. You look at how the community is growing. You look at the ethos. You look at where we are in the cycle. You look at what Titan X is built to do. Um, it's it's one of those ecosystems. It's one of those protocols, and that has one of those and one of those communities that's really, in my opinion, like the perfect storm. You don't have a community that wants to cannibalize itself whenever one part of itself looks as though it might be expanding its awareness. You don't have you have so much going for it, Titan X and this whole ecosystem, that's like, this is like the perfect place to build. This is the perfect place to um, come and leave a mark. And I feel that, at least on a personal note, I love the community. I'm a Pulse Chain guy through and through, but I'm also a Titan X guy through and through. And those don't have to live in. I don't have to isolate those two. To me, it's both one. It's like the aspects I love of crypto are both in each of those ecosystems. And so, you know, um, I think that with Titan X, it just made sense.
Yep.
There was just no other. There's just perfect. It was just a
I know.
perfect storm, and it's like, where else would I want to build on a like? If I'm going to build anywhere to start, I want to build a place where people are going to be like, yes, come build here. Stoked to see it, but also be like, hey, if this isn't good, we're not going to participate. We're not going to kill you for it, but what we're going to do is we're going to educate you, and the founders of other protocols are going to help with it, and everyone's going to guide you. And I mean, that's why Torus is what it is today, because I've had so many conversations with so many different people in this ecosystem that ever so slightly nudged this protocol to be what it is now. And so it's not my creation. It's a creation of all of us, in a sense, where everyone that I spoke to, everyone that I ever interacted with, shaped this protocol. So I'm the one that has the name labeled on it as founder, but really Torus is a product of everyone.
Yeah. And it's such a good point, because it's like, where else would you want to build? Titan X has made this environment where the ethos just absolutely makes it so good for anyone that wants to come in and build. What does Jake say? I can't pronounce it. Meritocracy.
Yeah.
Meritocracy. Yeah. It's literally anyone, no matter what. Like, I had no following, nothing. And I was like, I really want to build. I've got an idea. And anyone can do it. And that's why you're seeing so many streamers and so many new builders come up, because they realize Titan X's value, and they realize it's not that difficult. All you have to do is have a really good idea. There's infrastructure in place. There's devs. There's teams in place. You just have to have a really unique idea that, like you say, if it's not a good idea, no one's going to participate. But we're seeing this whole explosion of builders, and everything's going to be benefiting Titan X. And you're not seeing that anywhere else in crypto. So that's why I decided to build. And it sounds like you did as well. It's like, this is a first, and it's so exciting to be here, part of this community where everyone's benefiting each other. There's no animosity. There's no hate. There's nothing. It's everything's supporting each other. And I cannot wait to see what it does for Titan X and all these projects, how they work, especially Taurus, because this is very new, very interesting. I think a lot of previous projects are always expanding on different ideas to build up, but Taurus has kind of just completely gone in a separate direction and made something completely new. So I think this is a really good segue into the white paper.
It's almost like we planned that, but we didn't at all.
Almost like we planned it. So if you want to give a quick, simplified elevator pitch for everyone watching, what is Taurus?
Yeah. So the easiest way to understand Taurus is, I mean, there's a few different analogies that I like to use, but my favorite one that I really want to stick to for now is Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin has a system where the people set up miners. The miners earn the inflation, right? And they are the ones that are profitable when prices are going up. And the holders, they just have to hold and hope the price goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up, right? You can't do anything. You can't stake your coins. You can't, in order to stake your coins or stake them, right? You have to essentially give up custody to a centralized entity, and then you have counterparty risk. I mean, you have, bank failure potential, because it's still what it is. It's still traditional finance as faux crypto. But you can't do anything with your tokens. So what if you could take your Bitcoin and you could compete with the miners so that you're trying to gain increasing profitability, right? So you could do something with your Bitcoin. That's Taurus. You have a central pool where the miners, in this case, it's different language, but for the sake of the analogy, the miners are earning the supply when it's most profitable. But now when the stakers or when holders want to earn as well and they don't want to sell, right? They can go into that same pool and compete. And the system is fair. It makes sure everyone pays their dues so that they're always benefiting both themselves and the system, which in turn benefits others. And it prevents people from coming in or bad actors from coming in the way it's set up. So it's never been done before. It completes all of what, Hex was trying to do, what Titan X was attempting to do, and what Bitcoin was attempting to do. And in my opinion, it completes that whole possibilities that you'll have within the price chart and ranges of profitability.
Yeah, and that is such a good point. You're kind of bringing all these different tokenomics together, and I am not jealous. I'm looking forward to this so much, because I've had a similar thought process when you look at Bitcoin and you look at its economics, and then you think about staking and all these different elements. And it's like, when you start building, you kind of have all these different ideas, and you're like, okay, this doesn't work, this not for this project, etc., etc. But everything that's in Taurus has been processed in my brain, because they're all really, really good ideas, and you bring it all together. So I can't wait to kind of see what happens with Taurus. And maybe that explanation, sounds quite confusing to some people, but we're going to dive into the details right now.
Yes. And I'm still working on that pitch, because this is one thing I am struggling with. It's hard to convey a new idea when in a way I'm still digesting it. I'm still coming to understand it deeply, even though I wrote the white paper, I modeled it, but the language is the hardest part to communicate with for this idea. And I am going to refine that, but we'll keep going.
It's the same with Bitcoin, though. If you had to explain Bitcoin to someone and everything that was going on, it's very, very difficult. So, but Bitcoin is extremely successful. So I think it's the same with Taurus. There's a lot going on, but as soon as everything clicks, it's kind of like Titan X white paper. As soon as it all clicks in your head, it's like, wow, this has something quite special. So
100%.
where should we start to kind of get people through? Should we start with the supply mechanics?
Yeah, sure. And I would add one thing to the elevator pitch. If you want a single line, earn an ROI and sleep better at night, because it doesn't matter what the price is doing. You're able to essentially earn your way into profitability at some point or another. The system is designed for that, so you don't have to worry about the price tanking. You can't do anything about it. You don't have to worry about being a sitting duck. You can play the game of Taurus to make sure that eventually you win. You might need a little bit of patience, but you can always do the work to put yourself into profit.
Yeah. So talk us through the supply mechanics. How does it work?
Yes. So the language is a little different with Taurus than anything else that's out there. So instead of talking about mining, which the mechanics are very similar, right? We talk about supply creation. And so the primary inflation, or the primary supply, is from people saying, I want to create Taurus and earn. Like it's like mining, but instead of just mining, you're also earning more Taurus from the central pool on top of what you create, right? So when you create, it's based on how long you want to create and earn for, as well as the power you choose, which power is basically how much Ether Titan X, which we'll get to, do you want to use in order to play the game, right? How much do you want to put in? And it's a minimum of 1 all up to 10,000, right? So that's the primary aspect. The secondary, which I alluded to already, is the Taurus pool, which is that central pool where when you create tokens, you're now going to earn on top of that. And so it's like 2-tier supply mechanics. But as we go further, you'll understand the importance of it, because the one thing I didn't want is for people to come in and not know what they're going to get, right? Not know that they're going to have any tokens at the end of it. And for penalties too, you'll see later that it would change everything, and how I'll operate in terms of like punishment and reward and all that. It would change things completely. And I wanted Taurus to be the lowest risk, high reward protocol that is possibly ever seen. And so, I mean, that's obviously up for debate, but that was my intention, right? And so here we are.
Yeah. Okay. So the create is very similar to how mining works for Titan X, right? You can kind of select your power, and you can select how much you want to put into create Taurus.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
100%.
And we can so this is kind of more in detail here. So do you want to talk through? So it's 88 days to create.
Yes.
Do you want to kind of talk through what led you to make that kind of shorter that we've seen? So not like 280 for Titan X, it's 88, similar to Hyper, similar to Hydra. What kind of led to this decision?
Yeah, so I originally did have 285, because with Taurus, I was trying to do I was trying to be a little fun. Not that I'm super into like the solfeggio scales and all the numbers of these ancient spiritual frequencies, but I was just want to have fun with it. So I had 285 days down, and I was thinking, okay, this is it. And I started talking to people, and I could see people's hesitancy. It was like, oh, it's 285. Oh, okay. And eventually I had to give in to the fact that, there was a reason that reaction was coming up. And so I basically had to say, okay, I had to make a decision where it's like, I wanted this to be the best for everybody, So I had to say, you know what, we got to make this shorter. And what happened was, as soon as I made that decision, it clicked with me. I was like, oh my God, okay, wait, this actually works better, because if people are compounding and they're coming in, this makes the system work better, because then there's more coming in for the buy and burn, right? Which supports the price, which supports profitability, right? And then the flywheel works way better, right? Everything's more powerful. So I chose 88 days at that point, and that's a little hint nudge kind of thing of what this protocol is for when I say the word compounding. So 88 days, and if you're choosing 100 power to create with, you're going to get 1,000 tokens on day 1, just for 100 power, right? You're going to earn tokens on top of that. But if you go shorter, there's a bunch of math in this, and I mean, you don't have to try and go in and really understand the math. Basically, the smaller the power and the smaller the length, the less tokens you earn. With the same power, basically, if you have 100 power that you create with to earn, you're going to get 1,000 tokens. But if you go for a single day, you're going to get 11.36 Taurus instead. So this creates a huge difference in the floors. So you really have to know what you're doing when you're doing shorter than the longer term periods. But hey, you never know, right? Because the one cool thing about this system is it depends on how many people are actually playing ball, because that's really going to affect profitability. The less people that come in, there's a set number of tokens. And if those set number of tokens have a value, you never know where the profitability might land, right? So it's going to be really interesting to see what's going to happen on that front. But that's like the summary of the creation side.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense, especially the kind of this point in the cycle. When Titan X first launched, people were willing to wait, 280 days. I think now people are a lot more wanting things quickly because everything's moving so quickly. So having 88 days, I think, kind of is more appealing probably to quite a lot of the investors at this point. And it does. I kind of do like it, like you said, because it makes the flywheel kind of tick over quicker. There will be these waves that before might have been larger, but now it's kind of like these waves up and down between the staking and the create for Taurus.
100%.
So should we get onto the staking side of things just quickly?
Yeah, and I guess real quick for both of the staking, which we'll talk about in a moment, because this is unique to Taurus and why I'm saying these fees, but all fees in terms of how to stake or create, you can pay in Titan X, which is going to have a fixed ratio, right? Or a fixed number that you're going to create with. And you're also going to pay the equivalent amount or you can pay the equivalent amount in ETH if you only want to use ETH. And the reason this was chosen was because, as you'll see, everything that comes in goes into Titan X. And so this allows the opportunity for, and why, I chose different coloring and have really wanted to push for a wider audience than just the community to really grow the underlying infrastructure and bring more value into the ecosystem of Titan X, and the more that people are playing ball here, and the more the wider audience is playing ball with Taurus, the more it brings up everything.
I think that should be all builders should be doing that. Unfortunately, Phoenix can't, but having the option between ETH and Titan X is huge, because if Taurus gets loads of adoption, does really, really well, new users are going to be coming in, and they don't even need to understand everything behind Titan X, because they can just enter with ETH. And I think that's huge for, getting more users in. And I like, the different kind of style of branding is unlike what we've seen before in Titan X, but it's very unique. I think it stands out a lot. So definitely a really, really good idea to have that implemented. So do you have the set figure of how much it will be for Titan X?
I have an idea, and I haven't said this publicly quite yet, but what I will say, because I think it's important, and I'm realizing people don't quite understand, because I haven't said anything about any dollar figure or any amount of Titan X. They don't really understand. I haven't been able to give people the opportunity to understand just how potent the Taurus pool might be, and how potent creating might be initially. And so I'll say, I'm not going to say a Titan X figure just yet. Okay. Because it's important to get the system started at the right value. And so I'll say a value, which is somewhere between $1,200 to $1,700 is roughly where I want 100 power creation to start. And so if you guys want to do the math on how that affects everything else and what the price is, because again, 1,000 Taurus for 100 power miner or 100 power creation, right? And then you have 100,000 Taurus in the Taurus pool on day one. You can do some quick numbers.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that's very interesting as well, because it's basically going to be priced in Titan X. That's going to be a set figure. If Titan X does what I think everyone hopes and believes it will, if it goes up in price, then that means that starting to get into Taurus is going to be a lot higher, because the ETH is just going to be mirrored of whatever the Titan X price is. So having the input token kind of priced in Titan X, I think is going to be huge. It's kind of going to benefit the early believers, because they're going to get a cheaper cost basis, similar to what we see at the very beginning of Titan X with the ETH price. So it adds in a whole nother mechanic and game theory that people will have to kind of play with themselves, which is really, really interesting.
And like you're saying, this is the big thing, is the system is designed to, maintain itself and be profitable over time, just due to how it's designed. But because it's built on something, like you said, that can literally go to the moon. I mean, this thing getting dragged up by it, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally best case scenario.
Yeah. So just quickly, I'm sure we're going to get into more detail in a minute, but the main LP, is it going to be with Titan X or is it going to be with X28?
It will be with X28.
Okay.
Yep.
With X28. Yep. Which is, yeah, exactly like you said. If Titan X X28 goes to new all-time highs and it does really well, it carries all the projects with it, including Taurus, which is, yeah, really interesting. One of the massive benefits about building on Titan X, I believe, as well. You have the whole community side, but you also have these mechanics of the base layer entering hyperdeflation. So yeah, that is going to be super interesting to see. So do you want to kind of talk us through how the staking works and yeah, why would someone choose to stake instead of create?
Yeah. So typically, to frame how staking is different in Taurus, typically in a protocol, you either have staking to earn the supply, and that's like the main mechanic, or you have staking as a secondary mechanic that leads you to a different pool. Like in Titan X originally, you could stake to earn ETH, right? In Lotus, you can stake to earn Titan X. And Blaze, you can stake to earn ETH. You've got these. It's like a secondary mechanic, right? But staking in Taurus is unique because of the Taurus pool, right? Which is the central pool that you create and earn in, right? But staking allows you to enter that same pool. And that's what makes it so special. So when you stake, like it's going to be so clear for the most part of when you want to stake versus creating. And there's all sorts of game theory and strategy around possibly, utilizing staking at times and creating. It's like there's a ton in there, but as a just simple, cut and dry explanation, when the ROI is higher for creating, you'll simply create. And when the ROI is higher for staking, which will be clearly put in big, bold, bright, brilliant numbers, you'll see which one to do. So that way, when the price is low enough where creating is not as profitable or negative, it's going to be really hard to make staking not profitable, right? Because all you're doing essentially your cost basis is your cost basis, right? Like you're not putting in, like with creating, if it's, let's say, 2 billion Titan X, right? And it's $1,200 to get that right now. Well, it's $1,200 to create tokens that are possibly like $1,000 on the market, right? So the ROI can fluctuate because you might go backwards first and then go forwards with what you earn in the Taurus pool versus staking. You have your value plus 5% of what we'll get into in a moment, which is the fees, but then you're earning on top of it. So it's much less, you're not going backwards as much, right? You have less probability of going backwards, and it's easier to go forwards when the prices are lower. So it'll be big, bold, easy to understand. Like that's the whole ethos of Taurus, is simple, beautiful, easy to understand for the user experience. And I guess in a nutshell, really, that's it. And the 5% fee though is what is important here to understand what's with staking. So when you stake, you don't get in for free, because if you get in for free, anyone could come in, game the system. You could have staking protocols like Dragon X coming in and basically taking over the pool. But with 5% fee, you effectively create a really different environment where if someone wants to stake, the system looks at, okay, how much does it cost to create, let's say it's 1,000 tokens, right? If you want to stake 1,000 tokens on day one, the system looks over, okay, it's $1,200, 5% of that, $60. Cool. That's how much you're going to pay. And so you have to pay $60 in addition to what you're staking, right? And what that allows the system to have is constant economic energy flowing in, no matter what's happening. It's always bringing in something that the buy and burn can use, the buy and build can use, which we'll talk about, which is LP growing. And it also, because here's the thing we didn't talk about with creating, is every single day, just like the Taurus pool, the amount of tokens that you can create reduces by 0.08%, which does something interesting to the fees over time. And this is a predictive mechanism for something like a Dragon X being built on top of Taurus, is when if you want to stake 1,000 tokens on day one, right? Cool. You just look at what it costs to create 1,000 tokens. That happens to be a 100-power miner. But on day 855, everything is reduced by 50%. Now you're paying to create 1,000 tokens. you essentially need to pay 200 powers worth of Titan X, right? So now to stake that, you have to pay 5% of double the costs, right? So you effectively get a protection mechanism that's in there, but also you're bringing in more economic energy, and it's really unique, but really powerful, and prevents something like a Titan or a Dragon X from coming in and essentially utilizing the system, because every 88 days they'd have to remove some of their own supply or some of their position to go into the buy and burn to make some kind of value proposition for their own protocol and benefit their own protocol, which is removing from their share. And they have to essentially cannibalize itself, because it would have to sell down its own Taurus in order to pay the increasing 5% fee, which is effectively cannibalizing its own stake.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of love about this system, because let's say it does come down and staking makes more sense. It's kind of like auctions. There's an ROI there that's going to be made no matter what. The core is always giving off Taurus at a constant rate every single day. So there's always ROI to be made. So there's always going to be people coming in, staking, paying that 5%, which, like you said, it gets put back into the system to help everything, which is really, really interesting. And I really like this idea, because it's kind of like a tax, like a token tax, but it's really digested, and people are still going to win by staking because there's going to be an ROI there. So yeah, how do you kind of see it playing out then with the create and staking kind of dynamic?
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to watch, because the deeper you go with this, the more you'll realize that people giving up actually increases profitability for the people that stay in the game, right? Because if people are winning like crazy, right, and people are making serious ROI and Titan X is flying, you know, there's a chance, obviously, if there's a lot of economic energy coming out because people want to compound, take profits, whatever they want to do, they're going to push the price down. They're going to push the profitability down. Staking is going to come into play. Now, of course, I don't expect everyone to use the system perfectly, right? But if the majority of people are using staking during the times where it makes the most sense, right? Relieves the buy and burn from sell pressure. Buy and burn can move price back up. That's like easy to understand, the basic scenario that I expect to happen. But what's interesting here is the question of, okay, what happens if everyone dumps and everyone's like, I'm out, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Well, the Taurus pool still gives tokens. Doesn't care who's in it or not. There's still tokens there. And so it comes down to, if everyone leaves but a couple people, well, those people are going to make a lot of Taurus and they're going to be in profit. You know, and because they're going to be the ones that are bringing in economic energy, and there's going to be not many people selling the price, the buy and burn is still going to slowly move up the price. And eventually, these people might not be the only ones in the pool again. There might be more and more and more, which are feeding the buy and burn, locking up for longer. And eventually, the system re-kickstarts itself back into a point where it's profitable.
Yep. And that kind of makes it a whole nother mechanic there, because if you're a believer of Taurus, being in, if there is a low period and staking, you could earn a lot of Taurus, because, like you said, the same amount is going to be being given out every single day, or a decreasing amount, but it's going to be given out every single day. And if there's only 2 people in the staking pool, all of that is just going to be split between those. So it's kind of rewarding long-term believers, because, like you say, the buy and burn still going to be in the background. And as we've seen with Titan X, if it does go through hyperinflation, there's still all the mechanics. And we'll get into a very interesting one in a minute, but there's all the mechanics to help it kind of revive itself and bring mining back to profit. And the whole flywheel kicks off again.
Yep, 100%. Well, and what was I just gonna say? Oh no, it left. Oh, I had to think what I was gonna say. God. Okay, you know what? I'll wait for that. I'm sure it'll come back right as soon as you start speaking again. It'll as soon as I give up on it.
Yeah. So should we go into the earning Taurus? So this is kind of the core that we spoke about. Do you want to kind of just briefly run over for everyone to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. And be just like I said, as soon as you started talking, it came back to me. So I'll
Go
just
for it.
finish
Go for
that
it.
thought.
Yeah.
When the price goes down lower, right? Like, I really want to hit this home of how powerful this system is for the staking side, right? When the price goes down low, and Titan X is still got its 100 power costs, right, within the system, Taurus's value it shrinks, but the buy and burns or the fees stay roughly the same. So what you get here is you get an over, you get people paying, let's say like $100 in a protocol fee to stake $50 in tokens, but because the profitability is so high, because they're earning so much, the ratio of how much they're putting into the buy and burn completely outweighs any economic energy they might want to pull out. So you get into a scenario where people are putting in more into the buy and burn than the system, than they could ever sell down in sell pressure, which then pushes the price up to a point where it's becoming more profitable. And then maybe you get where stakers could sell down the price, but because it's so profitable, you have more people coming in because people always go where there's an ROI. And if there's an ROI to be had, people will go there, which is bringing in more costs, which is helping the buy and burn, right? And so it kind of restarts itself because the deeper it goes, the more the buy and burn actually brings in on a cost per stake basis, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that is. And I can't wait to see how this plays out, because it's kind of difficult to kind of perceive all these different moving parts in your head. So definitely after this is launched, looking at all the numbers and seeing how things play out is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend for all those of you who can model, who can who want to model, want to do the math. I would highly recommend doing it because you'll find so many nuggets that are just in the data that can easily be found. And you just got to do a little bit of modeling to figure it all out, and you'll start to see some crazy stuff.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So do you want to quickly run over earning Taurus?
Yes. So earning Taurus is, like I said, comes from the Taurus pool. Now, the question that you might be thinking of, okay, well, how does that happen? How is there a central pool? How can two different mechanisms be allowing users to get into and earn from the Taurus pool? And this is the Taurus share system, right? This is the unique part of Taurus, which brings creators and stakers together. So instead of having all this fancy math where you're doing real complicated stuff, it's real easy. The system looks at your tokens. Are you creating? How much are you creating? How much are you staking? Right? That way it's even across both sides. And all it does is it takes the tokens that you're creating or staking and it multiplies it by the days that you choose to stake or earn over squared, right? So if it's 88 days, you get 88 times 88, right? And that multiplies by the tokens you want to stake or create, and you get your shares. And this is static. This doesn't decrease. So this actually, because Taurus is decreasing on the creation side, right? That's its own difficulty measure. If these shares are becoming more difficult to create because the cost of creating those shares is going up within the system, right? So effectively, I'm going off on a little bit of a complex tangent, but essentially, it's really easy to understand. The share system is what creates the ability for stakers and creators to compete in the system, and that's all it is. But that's how you earn from both sides, is through the shares you get based on your stake and your create.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because it's like you don't need to rely on people coming in through mining, because there is just this constant. For example, Titan X, there's nothing in the reward pools at this minute for the 8-day, the 28-day, etc. This means there's always rewards in Taurus programmed into the system that are going to be dispersed to everyone participating. So you don't need to worry about there being any down periods where you're not receiving any rewards. You will be, no matter what, which, yeah, also allows for an insane amount into the buy and burn. Which, is there anything else you want to cover in the Taurus earn before we get onto Titan X distribution?
I think really I think the one thing I want to hit home is that with the share system specifically, the shares you can get for the same amount of Taurus that you are creating or staking doesn't change. But what does change is the cost of obtaining those shares. So while it seems that the shares are static and it might be easy, you can always just game the system, get the same amount of shares, the system actually makes it more difficult to get those, which is another difficulty metric in the system. So I just really want people to understand that it does get more difficult, but perpetually, right? So it's balanced. It's not the curves aren't crazy. It's not flatlined. It's this nice, smooth curve over time that allows for perpetual use, perpetual growth, and the potential for some serious growth to occur over time without having people that get in later be completely left in the dust by people who got in early. There's always going to be that advantage to some degree, and I would highly recommend taking advantage of that dynamic that you erase. But for people who are watching this, I don't know, weeks or months potentially after Taurus launches, the system is designed so that way when you get in, you're not completely behind everyone else.
Yeah, which I think is very important, and it's very good that you've actually thought that through. I think if I could, can I give my overview of what I think Taurus is? Correct me if I'm wrong with
Yes,
anything.
please,
Yeah.
please, please,
So
please.
yeah, just for everyone watching. So it's basically like you come in and you create, which is similar to mining. So people come in, they mine the supply, and then after that period of 88 days or however long they want to mine for, they can claim their Taurus. They can choose to stake or to sell. And if people sell and the hyperinflation, people keep selling, then mining won't be as, or creating won't be as profitable. So people are more likely to stake because the rewards are always constant in Taurus. This kind of core, is that what you're calling it? The Taurus
Sure.
core?
The
Yeah.
Taurus pool, yeah.
Taurus pool is always distributing Taurus. So if a lot of people come in, create, and leave the system, then the people that are staked are just going to be earning more Taurus. And all the Titan X that comes in, we'll get into the distribution in a minute, but all the Titan X that comes in through the mining or the creating is kind of sent to majority to the buy and burn, which is really interesting. So a lot of supply out, and then there's going to be incentives to stake. So the liquid supply shrinks by a lot. And the buy and burns in the background on a low liquid supply, which is obviously really beneficial for price. If it pushes up the price, then mining becomes, or creating becomes profitable again, and then the whole flywheel kicks off again. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Is there anything you would add to
Yeah,
that?
you nailed it. The only thing I would add would be that when you're done your create and earn period, if it's profitable, if creating is still highly lucrative, you might want to go all the way back into Titan X and recreate, because that's the whole compounding side of things, right? When you're creating, when you are putting $1,000 to create $2,000 in tokens, I mean, that's the way to go, right? So the system, but the system's going to give you clear indication there. So that's the only thing I would add is, like, you don't have to just stake. You can compound. And that's why the buy and burn is so hot. So people can compound their bags. They can build it. It's a wealth generating protocol, right? And one of the ways to build wealth is to compound what you have.
And we saw that at the beginning of Titan X. The people that were doing 30-day miners, even 60-day miners, or around that time frame, were making 5x's, 10x's, and they could just compound back into making even more miners. So that's a very, very good point. Yeah.
And it's and doing that too, you might think, oh, well, you're going to sell down the price. That's fine. Sell down the price, because you know what happens when you bring 2, 3, 4, 5x the economic energy back into the system. Now that 5x you just got, you gave to the protocol to help the sell pressure that you just put into it, so that it can support the next guys that are coming in, which then support you. It's a cycle.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So should we just quickly cover Titan X distribution? Do you want to quickly just run through?
Yeah. So basically, there are 3 main aspects of how the Titan X is distributed. We can go over the details as well, but basically, the first 84% of Titan X and ETH that comes in goes into the buy and burn, which is a perpetual buying smart contract that doesn't care about the price of Taurus, doesn't care what your mom thinks about it. It's just going to come in and it's going to buy Taurus nonstop and then burn it.
Okay.
And we'll go into the fractal. There's a vault that locks up some of the Taurus, but then there's also a buy and build contract as well, which is going to take 8% of the Titan X and ETH that comes in, and it is going to go and build the liquidity. So it's going to basically grow the ability for the pool to have price stability, to allow people to come in and out easier, for the buy and burn, for everything, right? Just to have a more mature market in general, to allow more adoption, to allow different levels of adoption over time. And then finally, you have Genesis, which we all know is kind of a standard in the ecosystem, which is 8% of all ETH and Titan X gets sent to Genesis. And of course, as always, there's no explanation, no expectations of this address. But one thing that's important to understand is it will never receive Taurus for any reason. There's no mint function. There's no possibility that Genesis can ever get Taurus.
Which is, why another reason why Titan X is so good, because everything's so transparent. there aren't founders that have a massive chunk of the supply that the only way they can realize gains is to sell down their own projects. This way, it means that the project's longevity is not impacted by the creator. It's completely fair launched. All the supply that comes into creation is done by users, and everyone has the same chance of getting in. So yeah, very, very good, I think, for that. Yeah, for sure. So just quickly, do you mind going over the liquidity pools?
Yeah, and I do. Let's go over liquidity pools, and then I'd like to go back over like explain the fractal and how that's going to work too. But so the liquidity pools also tell the story of what the buy and burn is going to do. So and how the buy and build is going to operate. So if you're wondering how that works, this will tell you the pathway of what both those other smart contracts are going to do. So the first 60K in Titan X that comes in is going to be transformed into X28. Now that's typical for the buy and build and the buy and burn. So any Titan X, and this is huge for people to understand, is that any and all Titan X that comes in the protocol goes into X28, which burns 50% of all the Titan X, just like that. So the first 60K in Titan X that comes in is transformed to X28, and then it's paired with a one-time mint of 60K in Taurus in a full range Uniswap version 2 liquidity pool, not version 3. And so this is going to be done via the buy and burn smart contract, and then all the LP tokens are going to be burnt, which allows for all the fees, which will be 1% pool, are going to compound and automatically go back into the pool, which is massive. I'll pause there in case you have any questions.
No, yeah, definitely makes perfect sense. Yeah,
perfect. Now, this is the other unique aspect, is the next paragraph, which is the first 60K in ETH buys wrapped Pulse, then mints 60K in Taurus, and then it bridges both the Pulse chain to create a wrap Taurus or wrap Pulse, wrap Taurus pool in PulseX V2. Now, I need to edit this because it's not going to be done by a smart contract. This is going to have to be done by a wallet because bridging and all these complex functions, oh my God, dude, it's just like a nightmare. From what I'm learning. So yeah, that will be done via a wallet that gets those funds. And bridge over to Pulse Chain to create a pool there.
Which is huge. Going back to the first thing you said about bringing in new users, this is perfect. There's a huge community on Pulse Chain. A lot of them have come into Titan X, but I think there's still some on the sidelines. But something like Taurus that's kind of bridging the gap between these two communities, I really like it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I mean, I would say this paragraph is a bit of an Easter egg too. Ooh. I won't really elaborate more than that, but I'll say that, you typically don't put a protocol on a liquidity pool on a blockchain for no reason, but I won't tell you that reason.
Future plans, I see.
Maybe.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting then. That's really good as well. There's going to be a future for Taurus. There's more coming. I think it will work perfectly on its own, the way it's designed, but having, investors know that there's kind of more to come is very interesting.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to bring more to light soon. But for now, just on the hush hush.
Yeah. So do you want to go through the fractal?
Yeah. And how so now, one caveat to the fractal is I have heard feedback, and I've been talking to Jake. And one of the feedback he's given me on the fractal is, he's learned so much about what works, what doesn't, and he was basically giving me the idea to bring up the fractal. And so right now it's at 8%. And I'll explain what the hell the fractal even is in a second here. But this percentage might be bumped up to about 28%. And I can explain why after I give the breakdown, but just as a caveat there, and as well for people watching, the only thing about this protocol that might ever change is the percentages of something like the fractal, or the percentage of something small, but the mechanics will not change. So, but what the fractal is, it's a vault. It's a time lock essentially, and it's time lock for the buy and burn. This is important because people get excited. They have trust when there is economic energy guaranteed in the system to be able to support the system in a later date, right? So if the buy and burn has $20 million, right, and you're like, sweet, I'm all in, and then it burns through that $20 million in 8 days, you're like, bro, like what the hell? So having trust and knowing there's safety in the protocol, that there's going to be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars coming in what will be 110 days in the fractal, that's an element of security and safety that people can always know is there to support them in the system no matter what. And so, yeah, every 110 days, that percentage that ends up in TitanX and ETH that's at the fractal will be deposited back into the buy and burn smart contract every 110 days. And it's a perpetual cycle. That's why it's called the fractal. It's an ever repeating pattern throughout time. Every 110 days, it redeposits TitanX and ETH back into the protocol to be used.
Which, in my opinion, is huge. This, for me, is massive because obviously what we've learned through TitanX and with mining protocols, there's often hyperinflation. And if that buy and burn does run out, then there's nothing apart from users to come in to push the price back up. This way, there's literally a set part of the protocol that's for its longevity, for its survival. And after day 110, so if people do max miners for 88 days, majority of that large hyperinflation is going to be out, and this is going to be put into the system to really pump the price up, hopefully not financial advice, to make creating profitable again. And then this goes back into that whole thing where the flywheel kicks in and it's just a repeating cycle. So having this is huge. And I think, 28%, the more in this, the better, in my opinion, because that really sells. Because if you're injecting buy pressure when there's a lot, all the tokens are out and there's no more to come into the future, that's huge. That is
100%.
Huge. Yeah. So 100%. With the buy and burn, is it similar to Vault when it's completely decentralized, or is it similar to TitanX where to prevent from MVV attacks? Do you kind of just run through how the buy and burn works?
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been something that I've actually been going back and forth with a few people on, and specifically Jake's been one of them. And what we're landing on, and I need to edit this into the white paper as well, because at the right above versus the fractal, it originally was going to be set amount and interval between the calls, but I wanted to actually be as decentralized as possible. So what the buy and burn that I want to have is a hybrid between fully decentralized and like a V2 buy and burn, where the intervals are constant. It won't change. At this point, it'll probably be like a 5-minute call, or every 5 minutes will be the call. And the only thing that can be changed is the amount. And so this way people have an expectation of exactly how many times per day that there's going to be buy and burns. But what it allows is for adaptation when there needs to be, because the thing that I really don't like about fully decentralized buy and burns is, especially in the infancy of a protocol, the protocols that have worked out the best have a benevolent central force of some kind that can act in the best interest of the protocol to make sure that, the system doesn't work in a way that harms itself, that doesn't harm the users, and eventually, though, can be either, burnt. That function can be burnt, removed in some way when there is a point of maturity that's reached, and so the way I have it, the way I see it, it's going to be something that can be renounced, but that will be the only function that's there to make sure that the system operates to a point where it can mature, right, and doesn't die in its infancy phase.
Yeah, and I think that's just such a good point. It's unexpected how much is going to be in there, so it's difficult to do percentages, because if you did 1% or 5%, however much, it would start with a massive peak and then it would slowly trickle off. Having a set amount is probably the best way, but like you say, nobody knows, or based on participation, based on the different cycles, how much is going to be in there. So it is, obviously we want everything to be decentralized, but for a lot of projects, it just does make the most sense for its success and its longevity. Mm-hmm. So it's a very good point. Yeah.
100%. And again, dude, it's 2 for 2 with me forgetting my train of thoughts right now. Jeez, dude. Okay, yeah, I'll let you start talking. I'm sure it'll pop into my head as soon as.
Yeah. So, do you want to cover the grace periods and penalties? This is quite interesting. When you told me when we had a call a few days ago, I was like, "Wow, this is a really good idea." So, do you mind just running through this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm realizing now, not what I said, but I'm realizing another thing that we missed, which we'll have to go back in staking, because there's an interesting aspect of staking which we actually didn't go over. So, the grace.
Should we do it now?
Look, sure, because this ties into the whole ethos of TitanX, which is low risk. You have control over your money. It's all that, right? So if you scroll down a little further, what you'll see is early end stake. Now, this is what's unique and really cool about the staking option, right? So I'll talk about it from a user perspective, and then from the system perspective and how the interaction works. So when you stake your Taurus, you can early end stake after the 50% period. Now, this, because you've paid 5% up front, you're good. Just end your stake, pay the gas fee, get out, do your thing. This allows for a ton of game theory. Like, let's say, for example, you're staking and the profitability on creating goes up. You could end your stake possibly and go and
Ooh,
create.
nice. Yeah.
And what that does is that redistributes the Taurus to the pool for the people that are in it already in that day. And so what's cool though is after the 50% mark, you essentially earn, or you get, in addition to your principal, because it's yours, right? You get your principal back plus a portion of what you've earned over that period. And I mean, if you want to understand the math, I mean, I got an example there in the bottom, but it's basically, it's really interesting. And this might go over some people's head. I'll try to explain as simple as possible, but the reason it's cool is because it still really amplifies the incentive to complete your stake, because when you complete a percentage of the stake past 51%, past 50%, right? You're essentially condensing your earn period of what you can capture your earned rewards into a 50% time frame, right? So what means is, in order to make 100% of what you've earned captured in 50%, you're essentially earning 2% or getting back 2%, right, of your total earned tokens at that time, every 1% that you complete past 50%. Is that making sense?
I think so, yeah. So if you wait longer, you will get more basically
And
through the yeah.
yes, 100%. And what's interesting about this is, because at the 50% point, right, you've earned half the amount of tokens that you're going to get, right? So now you get into a very interesting dynamic where the amount of tokens you've earned is growing while you're earning. So at the 51% mark, you're earning 2% of what you've earned at a pool this big. At 60%, you're earning it would be 20% of a pool that's now this big,
Okay. Oh
right?
wow.
And
Okay.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
the amount of earned tokens you get goes up exponentially as you get closer to your claim point.
So yeah, that adds in a whole nother element then, because you want to wait longer, but you have the choice. You're not locked in. You can early end if Taurus is really profitable, but then it's like you're missing out on that huge compounding that could potentially happen if you stay in the pool longer.
Yep.
So yeah, but it is really nice that you've added that in, because if someone does want to exit the stake, they have the like option to, and it also could stop. Everyone's quite driven on obviously money. Everyone is in crypto. So
Mhm.
if there's a percentage that they can make quite quickly, they could easily just end that stake, and that means there's less there's less that they'll be able to sell in a longer period of time, which is really interesting kind of mechanic to put in there as well.
100%. And then if you like from the user perspective, that's bang on. You absolutely nailed it. Now from the systems perspective, that same mechanic is beautiful, because like you hit the nail on the head. When someone exits and they don't take their earned with them, the system can handle that. They put in already some economic energy to support the system, right? So it's like, if they sell, whatever, right? So if now they go back into create, let's say, they want to make a lot, they want to go and compound, right? They've put in 5% of their protocol fee, and now 100%. So now they've added double economic energy from two angles into the buy and burn, which supports the whole system, right? So that's a really cool aspect of this whole compounding thing, is people can put 5% in originally and then go 100% in afterwards when they want to create.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that I really really like this mechanic. I think having the option as well is just better. Like I think all other future protocols should, and it gives me if I mean I love these mechanics of the like Titan X, Taurus, Blaze, Flux, and if I was going to build something in the future, this is definitely something I would implement
Awesome.
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, now this ties in perfectly though to the grace periods, because if you
Yeah.
notice, Taurus doesn't penalize you for ending your stake other than your earn tokens, and this ties into the whole ethos. Like I'm not big on necessary. I'm big on, there's natural consequences in life. But I don't like the idea of like punishing people for life,
Yeah.
for life happening, for things happening out of their control that they have to take care of and then paying for it. Right. I really don't like that. And so with Taurus, I wanted to build a system where if you create tokens or you stake tokens, those are yours. The system has no ability to penalize you for what you own, right? What you haven't claimed yet is the system still. So that can be rearranged. And this is the beauty of the grace periods and the penalties. You get 14-day grace period to make sure that if life's happening, you're good. This is for staking and for creating. After that 14 days, though, your tokens are going to leave quickly, right? But not your stake tokens. It's only going to remove what you've earned to date. So of the 7 days, it's split evenly per day, 14.28% of what you've earned to date each day of the total you'd earned is going to be removed until eventually it's zero.
Okay.
And one thing I want to say about this too is, there was an interesting, we've seen many times where like in Hex or there's another one too, where there's a few protocols that do this, where if you end your, if your stake or something comes to an end, right? Or like Titan X with the mining with the T rank bonus, right? If your miner completes, you have 7-day grace period. And guess what? You're still earning T rank over that period, right? What happens in Taurus is when you finish your stake or if you finish creating, your shares are immediately removed. So that way the pool fattens up. So, I mean, on a whole nother note, what's cool here is, and this is a whole other part of the conversation, is the ROI on the DApp is going to be wildly variable because of this mechanic.
Yep, for sure. Because if there's people because that was kind of game plan that people did with Titan X. They waited longer, but this way, as soon as their period's over, they exit and their shares are completely taken out of that pool, which means the people in that pool are earning more. So there is also the incentive. If you want to play the compound game, you want to get out quickly to then compound again.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think this on Titan X would have been, because the T rank bonus for Titan X was huge, and I think having something implemented like this could have helped potentially.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, I'm not complaining. Like I loved it. I'm sure you did too. And everyone loved it that was playing ball. But I see 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so is there anything else that we've kind of missed? Should we go into frequently asked questions? Do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I've only got 2 of them in there for now. But yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear your questions or if chat's got any questions. And then I'm sure they'll tie in because really there's 2 big ones that I've seen right now. Like, is this another fair launch mining protocol, or can Taurus be cannibalized by or eaten alive by a staking protocol? So, yeah, I'd love to hear your questions first, or if the chat's got any questions.
So are you against protocols staking in Taurus?
I don't know if against is the right terminology. There's because I was actually thinking about this, where what way could someone come in? And the thing is, as a protocol, I don't want one protocol to come in and essentially vampire any value and siphon it into their own. But what I do want is the ability for, maybe there's a pool of people that want to come in, maybe to save on gas fees or something like that. But the thing is, if people are doing that, it doesn't actually extract value, because there's people that are taking those tokens, and it's essentially people basically banding together to play ball. And it's not like the protocol is taking some of its value and bringing it somewhere else to go buy its own token, which leverages that token higher value, which means there's few people bringing a lot of economic energy all the way back out and profit taking. So I'm sure someone will figure out some way to use the system. But the thing is because it's such a short period and there's fees involved on both sides, I don't know how unless you had a perpetual protocol that was constantly bringing in ETH and Titan X while you were bringing in, you're using Taurus for your own buy and burn, it's going to be really hard to play ball. And I would prefer that people allow the system to operate at the highest level, because if you really want to build to enhance Titan X, You want this system to operate to the highest level. And the highest level of operation is high participation and high profitability for people in Taurus. And so to take away from that is to stop the system potentially from having the greatest impact on Titan X and everything else in the ecosystem as a whole.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So do you see, obviously, a reason a lot of these staking pools are entered by protocols is because they want to build on top of these protocols. Are you kind of, do you want protocols to come and build on top of Taurus and just obviously burn as much of the Taurus supply up to make everything better for users, for profitability? Is that something you want in the future, or do you think it's a good standalone project?
Well, it is standalone. It's built to need nothing.
Yeah.
What I will say is I don't have any ideas for what could possibly I mean, like I have a couple ideas that, I've thought of, but there isn't much that I've thought of. And this is kind of an open-ended invitation to people to get creative and if they want to build to come up with their own unique thing, because Taurus is unique in that it delivers different opportunities, different game theory, and we might see protocols that we just haven't seen before built on top. Now, you might see some classic stuff. I'm pretty. You could easily build like an auction protocol or something like that on top of it. The stuff that's been used time and time again. But I don't have anything in mind that would be specific to the protocol.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think a good marketing angle though, because we see how beneficial it is for build on Titan X protocols to come and build on Titan X. So if you could make this narrative for projects to come and build on Taurus, it could benefit the entire system, especially maybe on the post chain side. That would be
Right.
quite interesting. That would
Yep.
be quite interesting because if that is lifted, it kind of benefits the Titan X side of things as well. So yeah, no plans of yet, but obviously, I think the way that I look at everything as a builder is where's all the opportunities in the system, and just looking at all the protocols and looking at all. And Taurus sounds like it's going to be very interesting because it very similar to Titan X goes through this kind of inflationary period and then into the deflationary period. And if projects can make that speed that process up into the deflation, it's just going to benefit that entire system and make Taurus even more profitable. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. We do have a question from Mello. Shout out Mello. He says basically, why build on X28 instead of Shogun?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Shogun, like this is the thing. When you start building on what's built on what's built on what's built on what's built on what's built, I mean, it just complicates things from a user experience. And already I had the dilemma of X28 because it's one step further than Titan X. I didn't want to go any further. Like originally, this whole protocol was actually built on top of Dragon X. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, but then you just have sell pressure on Dragon X if people are making a ton of profit, right? And I'm like, I don't like the idea of that, And so here's the thing, if you build on Shogun and you have a perpetual potential wealth generating machine that you're trying to build, you have a lot of sell pressure on Shogun. And so because Titan X is at the core, if you're just rotating to Titan X and then back, nothing's exiting the system, right? And so the sell pressure is minimal on X28, and it's still, from a user experience, is plain and simple. You just need Titan X or ETH, and the system does this thing for you. Coming back is only, possibly one extra step in the process, or the routing just does it for you, right? It doesn't have to be like triple routing things to make it work through Shogun. And there goes my train of thought. Dude, I don't know what is happening this morning.
I think one thing for Shogun as well, obviously it does have that 8% tax. So building on top of it every single time there's a user that wants to go in, Sal is selling, which obviously benefits Shogun, but it kind of takes away from Taurus. And yeah, when you build on top of protocols, it is kind of leveraging those protocols. And Taurus is going to be working perfectly fine on its own because it is that kind of loop that you're on about. So having that standalone on X28, which is going to do amazing. X28 Titan X is going to do amazing. It's simpler for users. It makes more sense. I 100% agree with that. I think the only point to build on top of these cap supply like Shogun, like Inferno, is if you really want to try and leverage them to get some crazy, obviously more risk, more reward. But it's, for things like Taurus, which are more stable and kind of perpetual, working on their own, it doesn't need to rely on any of these external factors. It just needs to rely on itself and the success of Titan X.
Yep. Well, and something on that point too with the whole with when it comes to value, right? Um, you can't create or destroy value in the Titan X ecosystem. You can only translate it to one form or another. Like if you have Titan X value, you've got like 10K in Titan X value, and you go and you mint Shogun, that value still exists over in Shogun somewhere. It just has a different label now, right? And so the further away you go, away from the core where of the value that you actually hold, like we could think about like in crypto, people hold their value initially in ETH, let's say, right? That's where their value is actually stored. And then they leverage it by going into Titan X, right? And then the gains go up and the losses go up in terms of the risk factor, right? Even if it's a tiny bit, right? So then you get this asymmetrical period where when you leverage, you create opportunity for more reward, more risk, right? When you go one step further, it becomes even more asymmetrical where now the risk goes up and the reward goes up, which means more people win and or less people win, more people lose as you go further down that line, because it's just the nature of the leverage, right? Leverage on leverage on leverage. So
Yep.
by going too far down the line, you are creating a scenario where it's really, really, really difficult for sustainable ROI, sustainable mechanics to work, and for value to not have a negative consequence at the expense of too many users.
Yeah. And this is quite this is quite opposite, but this just came into my head. We were on a stream with Mike going through the Matrix paper, white paper, and it was obviously awesome. Eric stopped in and he talks about Power X. And it sounds like Taurus, because I remember you were like, okay, you were saying a few things, but Taurus wasn't officially announced then. Have you spoke to Eric about potentially collabing and putting Taurus onto Power X? Because I think it would work perfectly there.
Yep. I have had that preliminary conversation with him, and
Nice.
we're gonna see just how it would look, what the how it's going to impact, or what the rewards are going to be, how it's all going to work. And I have some cool ideas of my own to implement it with Taurus. So I definitely think there's something there with it for Taurus specifically. So you'll likely see Power X being utilized.
Nice. And so it's kind of this whole thing you're just talking about, the leverage on leverage. This is kind of a leverage for users, because I think on our own, with all the users we have, Titan X is going to do perfectly fine. I think there could be no more users come in and all the machines, and there could be no more projects built, and we still do really, 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 really well. The more projects come in, the better. The more users come in, it's exponential. And that's what makes me so bullish on this ecosystem. And having things like Power X, having things like kind of crossing the gap between Pulse Chain and Titan X, things like this that are going to bring in more users, which are going to hopefully be sucked into the system and just mind blown by everything going on, is just a huge net benefit. So yeah, having stuff like this, I really can't wait for. And that leads me to kind of a question: is where do you see Titan X being in this bull run? So we have probably a few months left, and there's a lot of these different factors, like I said, users, builds, everything going on, market sentiment. Where do you kind of see Titan X being in the next few months as we really go crazy into this potentially huge bull run?
Well, I mean, for one, up. It's going to be a fun time to be in this ecosystem in the coming. Like you can already see sentiment changing now, right? I mean, we've had, this phase of hyper deflation has really started to sink in, and I think
Yep.
over this next period, with the level of marketing, with the level of community engagement, with the level of excitement that's going to be just kind of everywhere, I foresee Titan X being a very, very exciting place to be. And what adds to that is excitement breeds excitement. So you get people excited, they tell their friends, they tell their family, they tweet about it, they go on YouTube, right? And you will see growth that, at least in my opinion, I think we're going to see growth over these next six to 12 months. Probably, 6 to 12 months and then beyond. That is going to be like nothing we've ever seen before.
I agree. It's quite a bullish statement, but I definitely agree. I mean, all the fundamentals we have, there's literally, I don't see many negatives. This is the first time this kind of whole mechanic of building on Titan X and everything supporting each other has been done in crypto. And when you think about it, it's like, why has this not been done before? This makes sense. All the mechanics that are coming out, they make sense. And I'm just so surprised that this is the place that's happening first, and we are here for it first. And I think that's why so many people are building. It's because they see its potential, they see its value, and it's like, imagine finding the Bitcoin white paper in 2009,
Oh yeah.
2010, and being like, okay, wow, I can see its potential. Why is this? Why is the audience so small for it? I
Yep.
feel like it's similar with Titan X of how everything benefits each other, everything leverages each other. It's just this perfect system that's being formed. And I can't wait for projects like Taurus, like Phoenix, like
Hmm.
Mizuchi, like Flare, like all these new ones that are coming out, and all the ones that are already being put into place already, like Dragon X, like Volt. It's such a good time, in my opinion, to be in crypto. And there is no other crypto that I would be invested in. This, it just all makes sense. And I think the future is bullish.
Oh,
I really think
100%.
it's bullish.
Well, and like, you can tell how bullish someone is by if they build on it or not.
Yep.
And you've built on Titan X as well, and
Yep.
it's coming, and Phoenix is coming very soon. So I mean, like, I would ask you the same question: where do you see, given that you're clearly as bullish as it gets because you're putting your money where your mouth is to the highest degree? Where do you see this ecosystem going? Let's say for this cycle, however it plays out.
For this cycle, yeah. I mean, there's so many unpredictable variables. I think even if there's no more users, like I said, we still do incredibly well. So, I mean, that says something. We don't even need new users really to come in because there's so many machines working away, making things super scarce, super deflationary. And when it does come to build on Titan X, I had the idea of more long term in mind. We
Mhm.
have millions in the buy and burn V2, millions of ETH. And I think this isn't just a one cycle project. I think Titan X is here to stay. I think the longevity of it is really why I decided to build, because it feels like we're so early to something that is going to have a really long lifespan. So that's why I kind of decided, because I was like, it's like having a city. I always use this analogy. It's like finding a city like New York, but you're there in the 1800s before anything. It's still a little farm town. There's only a few people walking around, but it's like buying a block there, a piece of land that's going to be there for the long term. I think that's what all these builders are kind of coming to this conclusion, and why we're seeing so many new ones as well. And I think it's just going to be exponential from here. I remember I watched the stream the other day, and it was like Jake was saying, "Oh yeah, it'd be good if there's 20 projects this bull run that build." We've already hit that, and there's 20 more coming. So I think it's really difficult to predict where Titan X is going to go, because users could 10x, builders could 10x, prices could more than 10x in my opinion. So it's, yeah, it's the place to be. I mean, and that's a good point. Anyone watching that has a good idea about building and you're really bullish on the ecosystem, just do it. There's all these devs put in place. There's all these companies put in place, systems put in place. Like, how simple has the process been for you from idea to kind of putting it into effect?
I mean, you just gotta have the time, the money, and the creativity, and the willingness to listen to those who have also come before you and have built a lot. Because if you're new to building, it can be a challenge to make things work in a way that you really want for the system, you know? And so I would say if you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to check your ego, you're willing to listen and make the necessary changes, I think, yeah, absolutely. But be patient. Don't rush things. I think
Yep,
the one thing that I would say is, and this is the ethos I bring for Taurus, is I want it to be perfect. I want it to be flawless. I want it to have, um, an experience for users where from the get go, it works as expected and better than expected. And if it's got my name on it, if it's an expression of who I am, then it's gotta have that standard on it. And I would say if we as a community, which we have been, for the most part in this community, having that standard and new builders bring that, it's going to be great.
yep,
Don't rush things, test, get the right audits, double down on making sure that your users win.
yep. And I think that holds even more weight now because there are so many new projects coming out. There's so much competition. Everyone's eyes are being drawn to different places. You need to have that unique idea that's going to bring the most. You don't want to just be putting something else that isn't a good idea because you have all this amazing competition. So right now, it's like if you do have a good idea, make sure that it's really thought out and that it gives a different kind of value proposition to what's been there before, or it adds to something that has been there before. I think that's, yeah, a quite important thing to put. But we're seeing so much of it. I think all these different protocols coming out, layering on top of each other. It's just a matter of time before. I mean, Shogun is doing really, really well, and everything benefits from each other. So it is always good to build. But yeah, if you have a really good, unique idea, I think personally, why not do it? Why
Totally.
not put it into Why not put it into play? Because for me, I was kind of sitting on some Dragon X gains and I was thinking, I can either hold this bag for this whole ball run, or I've got this idea and I can build it. And that was the decision, because you weigh it up in your head, you're like, okay, what should I do? But I think that's the better decision. And a lot of people, a lot of streamers, everyone's kind of come to that same conclusion, which I really, really like.
Well, dude, I'm the same thing. I put my money where my mouth is, and it feels good.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm like all in on my own project.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing left anywhere else. So it feels good to and to have that standard across the board was like, put your money where your mouth is. I think that's important. And
Yeah.
I think for new people that are building too, one thing I would want to say is, there's something to be said for building on a protocol that's already on Titan X, like a leverage on a leverage. But there is something to be said for unique ideas that bring in new ETH that benefit all the protocols, right? And also yours. That's a new paradigm of win-win, right? You're not just taking in and burning a native token. What you might be doing is you're bringing actual economic energy and value into the system. And on top of that, the biggest thing I think is going to make the largest impact for the ecosystem is our marketing and our choice of words as a community, how we interact with who we're talking to, how we engage with others. And that's something that I'm going to be really trying to push, coming into the future. And I would really, hope that if there's anything that people really focus on, you could have a decent protocol. If your marketing is great, there's a reason meme coins pump with an image and a story. You don't need to have the greatest thing of all time, but you need to have the communication, the language, and the marketing that captivates people and gives them something to believe in. And so if we as a community are rallying behind, I mean, look at Jake just nonstop, Eric nonstop. These guys they're constantly reaching up. We're, as a community of builders, putting this stuff out there and really honing everything to try and reach those people that haven't heard of us, that don't even need to hear about Titan X, but can hear about your protocol and still bring value in. Dude.
I'm too bullish. I can't wait to see what this whole ecosystem can do. Going off on a bit of a different note here. So with your stream you did with Crypto Kindness and Jake, you were talking a little bit about your decision for the Taurus logo, the Taurus design. Do you mind kind of touching on that? Because I found that very interesting when I was watching.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Taurus logo has a lot of meaning in it. I mean, if you go back into ancient and esoteric spirituality, is a lot of symbolism in the Taurus. And I have a niche form of, you could call it energy work, or you could call it, a healing modality that I've been in training for a year and a half, coming up on 2 years now. And, the Taurus is like a symbol of so much, and it represents like the magnetic field. It represents like ether or aether, which is basically, if you can understand Wi-Fi communication from a router to your phone, or that invisible stuff, there's that stuff is all around us too, and it connects us, to the planet, to one another. And I mean, I could go off on a whole tangent on, the deep spirituality behind it, but for me, there's just so much there, and symbolically, and it's an expression of, my spiritual side integrated with my more material side, kind of in one. And I had to laugh, there's sometimes where unconscious stuff comes through, and you can tell what had a significant imprint on my psyche by the colors of the logo. And I mean, that's hex, which is hilarious. I didn't realize it until afterwards. And I saw the yellow gold burst into pink, and it hit me like 5 days ago. I just sat here laughing. I'm like, wow.
It's in there. It's just imprinted.
It's just imprinted, and there's fingerprints everywhere of all these things that I've learned, and my spirituality, and my own process. Cause I feel as though there's one of the most important aspects of my life is expansion and awareness expansion, and having a clear perception. And you can't have a clear perception while you're still unaware of things. You still have unconscious processes that you haven't gone into, and very few people have ever been able to become clear. But one of my deep callings is to learn how to really get there. And so Taurus is kind of the manifestation of this, a lot of that, but into material form.
Yeah.
And
what kind of led to this kind of perspective on things? Because so you said you did have a podcast with your friend, and it was about kind of lifestyle, longevity, kind of around that kind of niche area. Is that kind of where this journey started into, I mean, the perspective that you just shared with us now?
No, so I actually, this started occurring in my early 20s.
Okay.
I'm so thankful for the childhood I had, because it was fucking hard. It was difficult. I had, but without going into it, because I'm not a victim. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, was going through those challenges, because I gained so much out of those experiences, and I'm still learning from them, which is beautiful. And so I was basically like, I had this crazy fortress around my psyche, basically protecting me from ever experiencing a lot of the stuff that I went through when I was younger. And I was also really curious about like conspiracy theories and all this stuff. And so I remember there was a time where I was on YouTube, and I remember watching these videos about these guys on YouTube saying, if you meditate with this specific frequency, you'll unlock your pineal gland, and you'll get all these crazy downloads, and you'll unlock the secrets of the universe. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm going to try meditating.
Yeah.
Right. So I started meditating, and I started meditating, and I started meditating. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sitting still, and things started happening, and I was, felt like a little different. And next thing you know, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And what started happening was, because I started to quiet my mind, my unconscious started coming up. And I had no idea how much was down there. And I thought I was going crazy for a little while, because I got so anxious. I got depressed. I felt like I was going crazy. I felt like I was a black sheep of black sheeps,
Yeah.
And eventually I started asking some hard questions, like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Do I have a purpose? What's the meaning of life? Like what are all these feelings? Am I, you just start asking yourself question after question after question. And, I kind of went through this cycle of like lost at sea, no idea where I am, what I am, gonzo. And then I would come back and kind of ground myself temporarily, latch onto something that would, temporarily ground me. And I would go through this cycle. And this happened 3 or 4 times, where I would completely go through an identity crisis, and go through meditation, studying, and research, and learning, and really questioning every perception, that I could find. Why do I have this? Why do I have this desire? Why do I have this attachment? Why do I need to react like this? And through, man, just so many cycles of doing this, which I've done some crazy stuff to, to learn about my unconscious. This eventually led me to where I am today. And as a little glimpse into some of that progression, I mean, the YouTube channel that I've had, connecting with the communities, connecting with guys like you, has all been a part of that, that awakening, so to speak. Because if you go and you look at my very first video, it's hilarious, the difference in just my personality, my way I was communicating. It's like 2 different people.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess, which is hilarious. That's the Cliff Notes journey. That's the Cliff Notes of the journey, as it would be for all of us, because you can't summarize your whole lifetime, in a moment.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard.
But I think that's so interesting, because I mean, I think that thought process that you talked about, I am experiencing that as well, especially with doing interviews like this. Like, everyone has their own kind of perspectives, and everyone comes to their own conclusions.
Mhm.
But it is that unanswered question that I think everyone has. It's like purpose, and what does this all kind of mean? And they're huge questions, so daunting as well. But everyone kind of figures it out as they kind of go along. And it's really interesting that this kind of energy that Taurus represents is kind of what is imprinted. And it feels like a really cool symbolic way to kind of get this project into fruition as well, because it's like showing this whole process of your life kind of pinnacle into one point, which is really, really cool.
It's crazy that we're here, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you're right. The purpose is something that's really been a difficult one as well, you know? And I wouldn't say my purpose is to necessarily, not that you asked the question, but I'm going to go here anyways.
Yeah. Go.
You know, I wouldn't say like I have a purpose to like do Taurus, you know? But something that's really resonated for me and made a lot of difference, you know, when I can remember to be aware of it, is, you know, to allow each step to be your purpose and to not necessarily be oriented to the future, to not be oriented in the past, but to be oriented to what's here. And what I found is the deeper I sink into what's here, the more the more you see things for what they really are. Because, you know, when I see you, right, and you see me, I'm not actually fully seeing you. I'm seeing you based on my perception, which is based on my past and my future. I see and you see everything based on what's within us. So being here now and allowing those unconscious processes to slowly move away allows us to even sink deeper into what's actually true, what reality actually is, who you and I actually are, which is something that it's when we are able, at least this is where things are pointing to me, when we're able to actually see one another at this level, how can you not see someone as completely special, as completely unique, as like one as an amazing creation that's here, you know, and that we're all a part of, you know? And so coming into that, it's slowly fizzling or integrating into my awareness, but it's had such an impact on me already that I needed to share that. So
Yeah. No. It's such a good point, because it goes back to that thing that your only reality, your only perspective is what is in your head. You share nothing else with anyone. So the way you view life and you view everything going on is just from your perspective. And then, yeah, when I think about everyone else is kind of going through that same thing, it makes you think like, whoa, what, like, how is this even possible? How is all of this going on? So, but that's what I really do like about Titan X is like, even this numerology stuff, it's kind of a different perspective that people share, people hold, people believe. And I really like hearing all these different unique ways that people are kind of trying to understand the deeper level of kind of, I don't know, reality, really.
totally, it's a unique time. It's a unique place to find ourselves where, you know, there is a crossover between, you know, a sense of spirituality, divine nature embedded into a very material aspect of our experience, and it's intertwined in a way where it's not just for fun. You know, there is meaning behind it. You know, there's people that really resonate with that, and it caters to a new audience. You know, it caters to people that really do care about their meaning, making money for a higher purpose other than just to go buy a Lambo and a Rolex and
Yeah.
impress people that they
Yeah.
don't care, when they really think that what they don't realize is they're really trying to impress themselves, even though they're trying to think they impress others. You know, it's just this, it totally speaks to people that I think are not necessarily in crypto, or they're just getting into crypto because they haven't heard the message. Because a lot of the message in crypto is like, you either hear, I made 1,000x or I lost 1,000x, you know? And so you have this gambling kind of ethos that most people hear, and most people are like, I am not touching that. I'm not a gambler. And so to have numerology, to have sustainable tokenomics, to have a community that resonates with both the spiritual and the monetary side for good, that's a different audience that we're going to be resonating with, which is special
Yeah.
and unique.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's such a good point. That is such a good point. That nothing else needs to be said. That is, yeah, perfect. So we've gone for about an hour and 40 now. I mean, is there anything else you want to kind of leave with the audience about Taurus before we wrap up the stream?
What I can say is, you know, Taurus is, I think, going to be a fantastic aspect and a helping hand in the community and the ecosystem. But what's beautiful is Taurus isn't alone. You've got Phoenix coming. You've got Matrix coming. You've got Flare coming. You've got Mizuchi. You've got all these protocols that are coming to impact the very thing it's built on, right? And so the more value that these individual protocols can bring into Titan X, the more every single protocol and every person in the ecosystem can benefit. So while Taurus is beautiful and it's great, so is Phoenix, and they both enhance each other when they work well. So I think if you're excited for Taurus, you should be excited for everything in this ecosystem. You should be excited for Phoenix. You should be excited for Dragon X. You should be excited for all that's built here.
Yeah, because this is everything that's coming, and there's so much more in the pipeline as well, which I can't wait for. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming and watching. I think hopefully everyone kind of has a more deep perspective on Taurus, on its kind of tokenomics, on how it's going to play out, how it's going to work, how they can kind of start planning about the ways they kind of want to play it. Because even if something seems quite obvious, we've seen in Titan X that sometimes it's better to go the opposite way. So it has all these different avenues, which are really, really interesting. And it's nice. So it's coming Q1 2025.
Q1 2025. And
Yeah.
what I will say is as early as possible while still maintaining perfection, security, all that.
Yeah. So we do have at least kind of a month where people can kind of plan out any strategies that they want to put into place and kind of communicate with each other about how they see it playing out, which, yeah, I'm definitely going to be participating because this sounds something that we've never seen before, a different spin on kind of bringing but everything into one system. So I'm super excited. Thanks for taking the time to come on stream with me. I really appreciate it.
Man, thanks for having this conversation. I'm stoked we can actually talk. This is fun, and to do it publicly and to talk about both Phoenix and Titan X and Taurus. Hell yeah.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it too. Hope everyone has a really good day.
Thank you guys.
Bye, guys.